Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Shannon Ebner, and I'd like to welcome Alex Kitnick, who is an art critic, occasional curator, and full-time assistant professor of art. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Shannon Ebner. Sorry, there's a delay. I've never experienced that. Okay, I'm going to keep going. I heard my voice repeat back. That was interesting. Okay, so Alex Kitnick, I was starting to say, is a full-time assistant professor of art history and visual culture at Bard College. Alex will be in conversation with REIKO Tomii, an independent art historian and curator whose groundbreaking and meticulous research investigates post-World War II Japanese art in global and local contexts. Both REIKO and Alex are based in New York. And I'd like to thank them both for agreeing to be part of the talk series. The idea for this pairing of Alex and REIKO is on account of a piece of art criticism that Alex published last summer in the online journal 4 Columns. An editor's note that accompanied that piece said that, quote, in light of the fact that museum and gallery exhibitions remain closed during the coronavirus pandemic, we've invited our contributors to reflect on an artwork that is particularly significant to them and that is easily viewed online. With this in mind, Alex wrote about the artist Horikawa Michio's Shinano River plan from 1969, which he came across in the exhibition that REIKO curated called Radicalism in the Wilderness, Japanese Artists in the Global 1960s, which was on view at the Japan Society in 2019. And I actually want to play just a really short video that Alex's piece linked to from the 4 Columns site as part of this kind of pandemic criticism.
アポロ11号では、月に降り立って月の石を拾うと、そういうような話なんで、その時にちょうど私の勤務している学校のすぐ近くに素晴らしい信濃川という日本を代表する大きな川があって、素晴らしい石がたくさん広がっている。そんなことで実現してしまったという作品です。だから時代の流れの中で自分のアイデアを生かせたというか、思いついたというか、そういうことです。で、自分なりに、この目玉になってやろうというような気持ちで、じゃあもうニクソン大統領に送っちゃえっていう感じでやらせてもらったということです。
That was a bit appropriate. Maybe we can think about sending out someone else some stones. So in the quiet of summer and the total uncertainty of the pandemic, as in not knowing what form our fall might take, I reached out to Alex about having a conversation with REIKO about her scholarship. Of Tomii's work, the art critic Edward Godmez has said that, quote, her own research and curatorial work have contributed significantly to this new so-called global view of modern art's history. In Radicalism in the Wilderness, Tomii describes, quote, international contemporaneity as a geohistorical concept, one that liberates us from the inevitable obsession with the present inherent in contemporaneity, as used in the English construction of contemporary art, whose basic meaning is art of present times, and helps us devise an expansive historical framework by means of which a multi-centered world art history may be told. Tomii argues that an understanding of this phenomenon may make room for overlooked or ignored currents in the story of modern art, as it is developed in 20th century Japan after World War II. And just to wrap up, here is something that REIKO said in an interview with David Zhu from Ocula magazine in 2019. There has been a good deal of resource building in our field in the English-speaking world, and I was riding on this wave. In an ideal scenario, scholarship is not a solo endeavor, but a collective exercise. Many of us in the field of Honja, post-1945 Japanese art, embrace Yoko Ono's instruction as our motto. Quote, "A dream you dream alone is only a dream. A dream you dream together is reality." So I'm going to turn this over to Alex now to more formally introduce REIKO Tomii. But again, thank you to Alex and REIKO and everyone joining us this evening.
Hello. I think I'm on now. Is that right? I'm on. Great.
Yes, you're on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Shannon, for that really generous introduction. And thank you to Ashley and Andy for help setting this up. And really thank you most to REIKO for, I was going to say for agreeing to be here, but for willing to be connected. Like Shannon mentioned, I kind of learned about REIKO's work in the last couple of years on the occasion of the exhibition Radicalism in the Wilderness, Japanese Artists in the Global 1960s, which was on exhibition at the Japan Society in New York not so long ago. But as I started to look into her and soon got her book, which the exhibition was based on, but has a different subtitle, which I wanted to ask REIKO about. I realized that, in fact, I'd kind of been reading her all along. REIKO has been hard at work really defining a corpus that was not so well known. She was one of the key contributors to the 1999 Queens Museum of Art exhibition, Global Conceptualism, Points of Origin, 1950s, 1980s. And I think for a lot of people, that's been a book that keeps on giving and that people keep returning to. And in addition to REIKO, to give you a sense, other contributors included Marie Carmen Ramirez about Latin American art, conceptual art, Okwe and Wezor about the question of conceptual art in Africa, and Peter Wolin. So it was a kind of all-star team that was really, over 20 years ago now, making the first moves to expand the way we think about conceptual art. And REIKO has continued to do that in so many ways. And often, I think, importantly, in the format of the exhibition. In addition to her publications, she's been an active curator. And to me, I can sense there's really an interest in making things public, which is perhaps, again, a way she's taking a lead from certain artists that she's looking at. In addition to Horikawa Michio, who uses the Postal Service, she was also a contributor to an exhibition at the Getty Center in 2007 in Los Angeles, Art, Anti-Art, Non-Art, Experimentations in the Public Sphere in Post-War Japan. And I, again, stress the public sphere there. But what I was really so struck by, I think, in the exhibition at the Japan Society, for all her contributions to thinking about art in Japan, REIKO has really done so much to kind of trace a network and draw connections between nations and countries and persons. And so, again, this idea of international contemporaneity that she coins in her book is something that I'm hoping we can talk about today. So Reiko, I don't know if you're there, or if you can, I think you're almost here.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Shannon, and then also Alex, very kind introduction. I didn't coin the word international contemporaneity. That was coined by art critics in the 60s in Japan. So
okay.
I borrowed it to create, build my methodology for world art history.
Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if we could talk a little bit more about that term. And I should say too that we are aware that we're speaking in the context of a photography program, so we will engage specifically some questions of photography. But I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about the idea of international contemporaneity. I mean, one question I have, for example, is this something that's always available, that we always have international contemporaneity, or is it kind of historically determined, if there are certain moments in time that might be characterized by this quality more than others?
I think just like globalization, began not in 20th century, but the like a 5th, 6th century. If you look at the trade exchange and then travels in ancient East Asia, just like that, it's always at the same timeness is always there. The point of my concept, the conceptualization, is the fact of international contemporaneity and perception of international contemporaneity are two different things. In retrospect, we can see, okay, like in the 60s, many similar things happened. In New York and Paris and Tokyo, and then even the wilderness of Niigata or central Japan. But at that time, that sense of, at the same time, contemporaneity was not strong, did not strongly registered. It has to be discovered by understanding that understanding your relative view with yourself and the world. For example, I think in New York, it's more difficult in the 60s to have a sense of international contemporaneity because New York is in the triumphant mood, like after ALEX and then pop art and then conceptual art and minimal art. So like it's the center of the world. And then like all the other places look provincial. Whereas from
So there's a kind of myopia of the center. That's
right, like kind of central provincialism or something like that. But seen from the margins, like we have some sort of the remote view. So it's very easy to compare things like ourselves and then them. And then although it's not that simple, and then in the margin also, Eurocentrism was ingrained. It's internalized. So in order to overcome, you really have to see the world in a fresh eye, I think. So that alone can be a big 1-hour lecture. So yeah.
No, it's funny. I wrote to a friend today who is a professor of comparative literature, and I asked her when she thought the idea of the study of comparative literature came to be. And she said she thought it was around the 1940s or 50s, and that perhaps it was somewhat inspired by the critic and historian Erich Auerbach, his book Mimesis. But to me, I've been thinking that you somehow practice a kind of comparative art history. We don't typically use that term. It's interesting that we don't really have it as something accessible to us, but I was kind of thinking of your method as a kind of comparative one. But if I can ask one more question about international contemporaneity, how do you count for the question of what we used to call in graduate school pseudomorphism, basically the question or the problem about when two things look alike that may have been kind of generated by very different methods or ideas. I was wondering if this is kind of a methodological question, and I know we'll look at some more concrete examples in a moment, but I was just wondering if you could say something about that problem or that question of pseudomorphism.
The premise of saying pseudomorphism is already probably Eurocentric, I think. Because in the state of international contemporaneity, especially in the post-war decades and the 60s, suddenly we see similar things like, everybody practicing conceptualism. And then, but, as you said, pseudo meaning the similarities, morphism is the emphasis. In my view, this similarity is more important because something looks alike becomes a point of interest, point of contact. And then in New York, you see Robert Smithson using stone. In Japan, Horikawa Michio using stone, and they are using stones, although they look generally not so similar, but the point of contact could be using stone, the very elemental thing. There are so many artists using stones in the 60s actually, and then why Smithson is using stone? Why Horikawa is using stone? That's a very interesting question from different place and different culture, different background. So this similarity is actually more localized view. So rather than saying pseudo-similarity, pseudomorphism, I call it similar yet dissimilar. And then a similar part is the potential for our globalizing view. That can be seen only mainly ad hoc in retrospect. Whereas and then we can get into the local differences, how that particular artist used stones, in New York and in Japan, and then that there are lots of different threads intertwined, and then untangling the threads is the really interesting part of international contemporaneity. So the point is not things look alike. That's a very easy part. But the exciting part is untangling those threads to understand the local particularity. Right.
So what becomes productive is, in fact, defining difference in a within a kind of common artistic language. One thing it seems to me, I mean, we've been talking about Smithson, Robert Smithson has already been invoked. Horikawa Michio has been invoked. The video, Shannon showed that video of him talking about his mail art by sending stones, or Shinano River Plan. One thing that these artists seem to have kind of in common properly, and with many artists at this moment, though it would be interesting to think about differences as well, the use of photography as another mode of dissemination, right? I mean, Smithson, of course, is a kind of known for being one of the kind of people to imagine site specificity. Horikawa Michio is doing something quite different. In fact, I mean, it comes from a site, but his work exists in this kind of dispersed fashion, right? The stones have to move. And in a sense, I mean, Smithson thought about the non-site, but in the case of Spiral Jetty, other projects, he needed photography to kind of make it known. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about maybe the ways in which Horikawa was thinking about photography. I mean, I love some of those photographs of him with the school children, for example. There was a way in which some of the photographs kind of walk us through the steps of the project.
To do that, probably we can get into the slideshow I prepared, because one of the most exciting thing about the International Contemporary Night is recent scholarship on Gutai, and then use of action body as well as gesture abstraction and happenings, and then so what I was talking about, the different threads coming into to create a local context and local manifestation. You can see actually, even just taking a photography, you can see the example of what I was talking. So let's, is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I share the screen. And then, so I thought about the photography and performance art because this is a department of photography, and then I'm not a photo historian, but the photography is very important. The aspect of the study of the performance art. Oops. Hold on. Oh, yeah. Okay. I will try to talk about 3 examples, important examples. We may run out of the time, but we can begin by the fun one, that's me on the knees, and then A. Arakawa sticking the microphone to me. I was giving a performance lecture on Shiraga Kazuo, Gutai member Shiraga Kazuo's Challenging Mud, which was 55 at Museum of Modern Art in 2011. And the photo was taken by Minchi Ampo. It was the part of the A. Arakawa's grand opening performance program at MoMA. It was almost 10 days long, and then one Saturday was devoted to Challenging Mud as archive. And then I was kind of tricked into do the performance lecture. I was not the original roster of the program. So the Shiraga Kazuo did the Challenging Mud. You can see the picture there. In 55 October 19, for the opening of first Gutai Art exhibition at Ohara Kaikan's Frontier in Tokyo. And then he actually performed 3 sets that day. The first set was a fake because the mud was hardened. It was mixed with concrete. And he had to use his knees, fists, and fingers to punching in and then maneuver. The most violent was the 3rd set. And naturally, by this you can see he knows what he's doing.
Reiko, can I ask you a quick question about that? Sure. I've always been struck, in fact, by the first image that you showed of Shiraga.
This?
Yeah, exactly. The presence of the cameraman. And it looks like it's someone who's making a motion picture, not a still photograph, right? So even captured in the documentation is the idea of documentation, right? There's this kind of recursive nature to the image. But it also brings to mind, of course, Hans Namuth's infamous photographs of Jackson Pollock in his barn in the Springs, which was then, read as performance. I would say probably by Shiraga first, and then by figures such as Alan Caprow in The Legacy of Jackson Pollock, which is 3 years after this. I was wondering if you could say anything before we jump, if in fact that image, these images of Pollock did kind of travel by photography, and maybe if in a way that this image of the cameraman kind of insists on not just raw material presence, but how presence and performance is always tied to a kind of further mediation.
That's actually exactly the goal of what you are going to hear, actually.
Okay.
And then the Pollock's photograph, I'm not sure if Shiraga saw it. The Gutai leader Yoshihara Jiro certainly familiar with that. And then so vicariously Shiraga may have known that, but the actually context is rather different. So let me just move ahead.
Yeah.
So anyway, we had photographer too, actually, as you said. She's not just documenting, she's a part of my lecture. She's playing the role of photographer. She's Minty Ampo, the eminent Gutai scholar. And then we have to start with actually creating the mud, faking we use the concrete cement, but also the garden soil, because we couldn't find the Japanese wall mud. So we have to fake it, and then we have to. So this is the beginning of actually my lecture, and then we get the seemingly light consistency, and then I'm now ready to just jump into the mud, and then since this is a lecture, before getting into the mud, I had to give all the art history class, and then A helped me to show the pictures, that these famous pictures. And then you can see because this is a museum of modern art, and then cement is toxic material, so we really have to cover things up, and then create a restricted area of performance, and then a sandbox, a children's sandbox, right? And then I started gingerly. I'm a woman. The Shiraga was a joke, and I'm a woman, very dainty art historian. So I started, and then also I'm not going into violent one, but the more the first set that he had to really punch mud. So I first step on the mud, and then Araka tried to get my word. And then I get on the knee, and then you can see it from the above, just like the Shiraga's famous view. And then you can see I'm trying to punch the mud, use the feet, this is actually rather dynamic view. I like it. And then more close up, I'm trying to, maybe I slipped or something. And then this is my mud picture. The result of my challenge. It was fun. So it was a historical investigation. So I had two questions in my mind. What did he do? And then why did he do it? And then photography was very useful. There are tons of photography to reconstruct how Shiraga acted. And then also if you look at all these, how shall I say, mud, texture, and then the way his he make traces, that's how we figured out the consistency of the mud. But I had to emphasize that the photography was not enough in reconstructing Shiraga's act. Often the time oral history interviews by Shiraga himself and other Gutai members helped me understand how things transpired. So what did he do is a basic question we always have to ask, I think, about the making. Why did he do it was a more probably contextual and speculative question. And then photography actually helped, along with the oral history, to reconstruct a narrative surrounding Shiraga's acts. Usually when we talk about performance art, we say artists explore the body as a medium, or artists explore time-based expression, which is not the possible in painting or sculpture, and that's generally applicable to Gutai's Shiraga's work. You know, body is an important element, and time is also an important element. But usually, when we say an artist went for performance, we usually think he tried to go beyond painting, not for painting, go beyond, transcend painting, ditch the painting, leave behind the painting, leave painting behind, I mean. Actually, Shiraga's case was performance, was challenging mud, was an act to make a painting. The exploit bodily action to explore new possibility of picturing, and then voila, this is the work. He is standing next to his work, the mud picture in the exhibition postcard. The left one was like that looked like mine, right? That was my model. The lots of holes, and then. In his case, doing the challenging mud really helped him liberate to incorporate dynamic and violent and then bold feet movement into his work. So here you can see the rather tight footworks of his foot painting. But after this challenging mud, his footwork, like a brushwork, footwork, became really light and then the versatile. So it's a very different development. So the performance served as a catalyst for a new his development. Another thing is this picture that you asked. For Gutai, performance was for publicity, but very conscious exploitation of media outreach. So they use publicity for broader communication with the audience, both inside the country and internationally. So this picture on the left-hand side, this is a news cameraman. So he's shooting for newsreel. And then actually there is a very short footage of the first Gutai exhibition as a part of newsreel, and I saw it, and then this scene was maybe 1 minute, maybe less than 1 minute. I saw how he actually did it. That was really useful to see. And then this right picture, this is the cameraman from Life magazine. So you can see the ladders set up, and then Shiraga was doing another action. Unfortunately, the live photographs never land, so we didn't know. We cannot locate the photographs, but Shiraga did not initiate the media outreach. This is a Gutai's leader Yoshihara Jiro's global strategy by using journalists, photojournalism, media to make Gutai known throughout the world. And of course, Yoshihara was aware of Pollock's Life magazine, the article. Is he most famous? What was it? Most important, the American artist or something. So he was aware of that, and he knew the power of media. Also within Japan, the media was very close to art world. So it was the Yoshihara himself had witnessed the power of media himself. So that's why Mintiampo was asked to, actually she volunteered. She said she has to be in there as photographer, otherwise our historical investigation is not complete. So and then she's the one who said we need radar so that we can shoot the kind of bird's eye view. So that's why we need a scholar, And then, so the Gutai's case, why did he do it? Is the exploration of picturing potential, that's very specific to Gutai, but the exploration of publicity as vital part of the operation is not the concern of Gutai alone, but rather broadly shared by avant-garde artists in 60s Japan. For example, this is from 58, the poster boy of anti-art, Shinohara Ushio, is playing a role of rockabilly painter for the Newsweekly article. And then like a Yoko Ono cut piece. This is the second staging of cut piece in Tokyo that was duly photographed and then shown in reported in the Newsweekly. So the publicity is very important to understand the role of photography and understanding Japanese performance art. And then the reason why is, as Shinohara, that the rockabilly painter guy, Shinohara famously said, publicity was reward in the mass media in otherwise rewardless avant-garde artist's life. Because at that time in Japan, very little market for contemporary art and then avant-garde art. So he could not expect financial reward. He cannot sell work. So he sought reward elsewhere, meaning mass media. And then publicity was the currency in the market of information. And then photography was a vital form of information. That's my interpretation as like how to see the information and photography in terms of publicity.
So you're saying that different protagonists might have had different investments. For Shinohara, he's thinking more about a language of publicity and information, where Shiraga might have been more interested in the idea of extending a language of painting.
Right, yeah. So but the Shinohara was the most avid publicity seeker. And then most lively personality of the 60s art. So the information, like one of the lessons of my collaboration with A. Arakawa was to understand not only photography, but also texture, other kind of information, or integral part of performance art. So the usually without the painting, you can see painting and then you can study it, or sculpture you can study it, but the performance art, you need photography, you need information, because it's gone. So I began to formulate the idea of information as the second life of performance art. I heard other people use
yeah. It can also do kind of paradoxically another thing. On the one hand, the image kind of fixes in our mind. On the other hand, we might become very aware of our absence at this initial event, right? It kind of flips both ways somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. And then the second life is an one way to. Okay. The usually in the early history of performance, at least in Japan, an artist performed and a photographer photographed for them.
Mhm.
And then a question arises, whose work is it? An artist or photographer?
Mhm.
And then in practice, often photographers claimed copyright of the photograph, especially in the time of the anti-art period.
Mhm.
That's really, the artists were happy, like, they were being photographed, and then but they grumbled when they had to pay copyright fee to the photographer when they want to reproduce their performance photographs. So yeah, that's it's not a laughing matter. But we also have to remember the 60s was a formative period. So few conventions were in place to normalize or legitimize performative practice as part of artistry. So nobody knows what to do with the performance art as a history or as an object of study. And then I take symbiotic view. Of course, performance comes first. There's no ambiguity about that. The chicken and egg, but performance always comes first. Otherwise, you cannot take photography. But the photographer gives, or photography gives the second life and extend the life of the what disappeared. But if that's the case, how do you make the second life as your work? Because if photographer claimed the copyright, it's not yours basically. And then in non-art, which followed the anti-art phase in the mid-60s, the equation changed and artists began to assert their agency by working with the second life, that is information.
Yeah. One question, Reiko,
Yes.
about the Shiraga, the challenging mud.
Right.
When it was first performed, was there any audience present, or
Of
was
course.
it kind of?
Of course, that was a media event. That's a press view. So that's a press day. So he had to perform 3 times because there are 3 sets of media coming.
So one for the audience, one's for the photographers.
No, they are all for photographers.
So different sets of photographers, but I'm saying, were there people in seats where tickets sold, or was it really done for the camera?
That's just for the camera. And then
right, that collapses a little bit the question of the first life, second life, right? If I think of something like Carolee Schneemann, Meet Joy, who she and Shinohara have works in '63 that are sharing a lot of languages. I mean, when she would do Meet Joy, there was an audience present, right? I think it's interesting to think about, in a sense, that this Shiraga was solely done for the camera, right? There's a kind of collapse of primary experience and kind of secondary information, regardless of his intention, right?
Yeah, because that was not performance in a way we talk about performance art like a Carolee Schneemann or
right.
Although if we start talking about the presence of audience, Bruce Nauman did his lonely performance in his studio, right? And then he took he videotaped or he filmed his movement, and then that's he's playing for the camera,
right? So maybe
as an audience,
similar to Nauman in a certain way.
Yeah, but the point is publicity. So the transmission was the premise. It's not just the broader, bigger, the beyond the art world. The transmission was the goal. And then like it's a newsreel, people saw it and so on and so forth. And then like Shinohara's, the rockabilly painter, as well as Yoko Ono's cut piece, they were popular weeklies. So it's not the art magazine, it's a general interest magazine.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's the difference. They were never reproduced in art magazine as such. Yeah. So it's in terms of a market of information, there were limited availability within the art world, actually, in that sense.
Can I ask you a question? I'm still fascinated by your performance, your research performance at grand openings. Do you feel, I guess I'm asking you kind of as an art historian question. You said to understand the work, we need photographs do one thing, oral history did another thing. Can you say what recreation? I'm interested in this idea of recreation as research somehow. What we learn by perhaps by doing something again. I just wonder kind of what you got out of it, your own understanding of the work from that day, from being photographed and the microphone held to you.
Yeah, I was very conscious of being photographed. So like I knew I have to pray the role. Yeah. And then like, but we see, but in my case, I'm not creating a new work. I'm following what Shiraga did. So I studied what Shiraga did. And then so it's not as something I am creating. It's in a way I am performing. So I have a first person agency, but at the same time, I was kind of distanced, like calculating, like, okay, I go this way now, so we have to go that way next. I have to use my knees, and then like, so it's all so more acting.
Yeah.
Almost method acting, maybe.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So
Reiko,
yes.
Should we talk about one more project? I'm just keeping my eye on the clock, and I know Shannon wanted to leave a certain amount of time for questions, which I should say I'm happy to field if people send them to me in the chat. So we can talk about one more project and then open it up.
I think in that case, I will skip the Horikawa. I just mentioned Horikawa is a kind of hybrid of anti-art and no-art. So he actually relished media exposure. The stone mailing was very popular for among newspaper people. So he has several newspaper clippings like this. And then like you talk about, you asked me about this picture. This picture was also taken by a Mainichi newspaper reporter. So what he did was often captured by the media very well. But the important point is he didn't just do it for media, of course. That's a byproduct in his case. He controlled the second life of his work by collating information, both photography and textual material, as his own work, which is very important in the context of Japan, because not many artists connect the performance and then photography in this in his very informative way. And then interestingly, the way he compiled the data as an information as his own work that
Mhm.
prompted the the next project and then the next project. So this is he not only he considers the stone mailed to Nixon or fellow artists or Tokyo critics in Tokyo,
Mhm.
his work, but all these derivative information, the way he compiled it, are his work too. This is a
Yeah.
very important point in his case.
He's
However,
kind of thinking
yeah,
about the kind of infrastructure of transmission in a way,
right,
which
yeah.
incorporates
Yeah, and then they
media.
creating a data card is important because usually mail out, the problem of mail out is if you mail it out, you don't have the thing.
Right, right.
It's in other. He made it a rule to send one stone always to himself, but that's still not the so the making a record, like a compiling information, became a integral part of his thinking from the beginning.
Right. And also I think the idea that the artwork is not completely self-evident. The artwork itself, if we think about the stone, is not completely legible. That to understand the project, that you need the receipts, you need the documents, you need the media clippings, right? So it's encouraging us to turn to the supplement in a way, or to again, I mean, this question of what is primary and what is secondary, I think is central to both these questions. Reiko, I'm just nervous about the time. I don't know, would you be okay if we turn to questions now, or do you want to introduce the final project?
Yeah, if I may, like in a short way,
of course.
So like you started saying like a primary and secondary. So the question is photos of performance work of art in and of itself, or performance art is the primary work and then photography is the secondary. It's I think ultimate conundrum of performance art, I think. So the artist Hikosaka Naoyoshi thought about it and then like decided to photograph himself in action and then circulate resulting photos as information art. It's his word. And then in this way, both act and photos are his work. So what he did is he poured the latex in his room. It's a tatami room, 8 mat, and then he set up the camera in the garden, and then so somebody can press the shutter while he's acting naked, and then pouring latex, the rubber, liquid rubber, on his floor, and then we have it's almost like a serial photograph, chronophotographic way, like a film, like we have the 350 frames of this, and then like among them 100, about 90 is the focusing on action like this, and he thought about showing the photograph, like you can see, he selected some frame for print. And then he thought about showing the print as his work of, that was his initial plan for, so this performance, floor event number 1 was a private event performed for the photo camera. Only 2 witnesses. One helped him, inside the room, and then another person pressed the shutter. And then, so the photography was the goal of this act. So he created this type of the vintage print. The only hitch is he realized, because it's his room, right? So he slept in this room and then lived, over next 10 days, and then noticed the latex dried out and then changed its texture and then appearance from very milky way to translucent, and transparent.
Mhm.
And he thought that's beautiful. He was trained as a painter. That's a part of the reason. But he thought it's beautiful. And then because he didn't invite any audience for this one, he thought that's too bad. I want to show this to everybody else. So, so for the exhibition, he was supposed to show photographs. He restaged the act. So he kind of checked the photography part. He just, yeah, he checked the information art and then like went for the actual performance. And then he actually explored the performance in 7 times in different variations. And then the photograph from that performance only used publicly seen in this form as the invitation postcard. The only thing is he thought about other ways of doing the kind of information, time-based information art by photography using the slide, because this is the this number 372 delivery event. So what he did is he lived in Tokyo. He had a show in Kyoto, so he packed up everything in his room, including his tatami mat, and then like he carried it from Tokyo to Kyoto, and then unpacked that, and then like recreated his room, and then he poured the latex, and then and then after that he packed it up again and then came home. So if we can have so this is some of the, and then he actually created a title slide and the ending slide. So he really think in terms of like a film. And then like at that time, this is as much as he could do with the technology available at that time. But now we can see video, please.
Okay.
Now it's so easy to create a video using a photography. So yeah, let's see it. Yeah. So this is the title slide, delivery event. It is his room. And it's packed up, and revolution is there, his tag. So and then this is he, and all the friends helping. And then like this is the big truck. You can see, oh, Mount Fuji there, and then you can see him. So from Tokyo to Kyoto, he ran. This is the gallery, white cube. He didn't like it, so he broke the wall and then like set up his room again. For the latex, you can see it's all white. Then it's drying up, so like you can see the texture is changing. It's usually you can have solo exhibition at the gallery for over a week, 6 days actually. So the last day they rip off the dried latex from the tatami mat. You can see they are walking slowly. It's very difficult. It's very, you need lots of force to rip it off. And then you pack up again. You return the gallery to the original state, and then you pack up again, and then go home, and then the end. He didn't do that. He didn't show the slideshow at the time in the 70s. It's recently uncovered from his archives, and then we turned it into a video.
Wow, amazing. That was fantastic. Maybe I can ask the first question.
Sure.
Can you say something about his use of the word revolution, especially when applied to the domestic sphere or his own domestic space? What were maybe some of the kind of political stakes of these practices, or the political stakes that the artist imagined?
The first of all, he was part of the radical artist group Bikyoto, the Artist Joint Struggle Council, which was a part of the student movement in 68, 69. So he started with the political critique of art system, like exhibition systems and school systems. And then after in Japan, the student movement as well as anti-war movement were quashed by the state. So after defeat, they shifted the target of critique to institution of art within the art world. And then so the revolution is a kind of carryover from that radicalism, as well as revolution. The verb is revolve, right? Revolve meaning rotate, right? So he not only changing and then making a new thing, but his revolution is making a circle to like the examine things very closely. So that's the theoretical meaning for him.
Oh, interesting. We have a question from Susan Laxton, who I believe is in California. She writes, in 1957, the French painter Georges Mathieu, a figure notorious for having rendered the painting process spectacular through publicity, performed in a department store window in Tokyo. And I guess in Paris, he also did performances on stage. And Susan asked, do you have a sense of what the Gutai group thought about this work? Did they embrace it or reject it?
The Matthew's work, actually, he had a direct influence on Shinohara. He realized that the action and publicity is a good thing for a contemporary artist. Just looking at how many cameramen came to shoot his painting performance. So that's the one thing. Mathieu was generally in the movement of informal, and then by the time he came to Japan in '57, the Gutai group was in the mood of expanding their networking. So the Mathieu was welcomed as a fellow action painter. Yeah.
Great. This is a question, we have a lot of questions, so let's see how many we can get to. From an artist who is maybe thinking about the questions between art history and criticism, or art then and now. She writes, do you see an artistic difference between a mid-20th century publicity as currency via photographs and a 2020 publicity as currency via photographs? I take it the question is something about kind of maybe the status of the photograph, the power of the photograph in this post-war moment and in our own moment today.
Yeah, it's probably very different. In the 50s and 60s, camera was actually a rare commodity in Japan. The Yoshihara, well-to-do businessman, and then so the getting cameraman and with his network, it was actually not part of his operation. I once asked some curator in Osaka, some other groups don't have photographic documentation of their activities, and then I asked why, and then he answered, the camera was very expensive at that time. So the access to technology, that's very different in the 50s and 60s and now. Even a video, like video park, like in the mid 60s, the something portable but still very heavy. Now it's amazing. We can just shoot by the iPhone. So
Yes.
and also the delivery system is different because the anti-art artist had to depend on photojournalists for publicity seeking because photojournalists had access to the outlet. Artists didn't. So a few photojournalists actually became a collaborator or conspirator of artists' various exploits, the very performative exploits, and then brought those photographs and stories to the weekly magazines for publication. So that's why I said the symbiotic. I take symbiotic view primarily because that type of the collaboration they had at that time.
Right. So there was a question about why these major media outlets kind of reported on these events. And if I'm understanding you, you're saying one of the reasons might just be because these are the people who had access to the technology who were interested. Yeah, interesting. One question, and it struck me looking at the REIKO Saka floor event, is that maybe he was kind of interested somehow in indices and interested in recording. And if we think about photography famously as a kind of art of the index, that casting is also a kind of indexical practice. But this question asks if REIKO Saka kept the items as is, including the bits of latex on them, as a kind of document as well. Do those still exist, or do we only have the photographs today?
Those things deteriorate, and then so he didn't keep it. The only time he tried to preserve it is when he did his performance in Paris for Paris Biennale. The latex he ripped off from the floor, he gifted to the director of the museum where he had the performance. And then we don't know what happened to that.
Yikes. Here, maybe this will be a last question because it kind of connects us to where we began earlier. This person writes, at the beginning you discussed the contemporaneity of artistic trends, such as using stones. Why do you think that there was a global trend to incorporate quote unquote natural materials into artworks at the time? How do the Japanese artworks that used natural materials relate or differ for those reasons?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah. Well, maybe it can be the last.
Yeah.
The last one. You've answered and given a lot tonight.
Well, I think the 60s was when the international contemporaneity became very prominent. I think by that time, modernism, different flows of modernisms, in localized modernisms, began to synchronize, I think. So the informal and then the abstract expressionism and Gutai and Cobra, that's the probably first sign of the major moment of international contemporaneity. And then that's a painting movement that ended painting generally, we can say that. And then that means modernism often the time was considered like a, painting movement transition. And then like, so it reached a saturation point that the artist really needed to go beyond painting. Of course, before that, there's a way, the direction to go out of painting, but I think 60 was a saturation point, and then started looking at things, everyday object and then familiar object, and then in Japan, stones are all over the place. If you go to riverbed, river nearby you, it's there. The not as great as the Horikawa's stones, but if you want a stone, that's a 3A material, available, affordable, accessible. I think
so it's a kind of everyday.
Yeah, everyday material. So the many artists, actually, I can make an exhibition by stone, like, you know, like a 10 or 15 artists, Japanese artists, I mean, who use stones around that time. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, I feel like perhaps we should leave it there. It's been amazing, and it's really been an honor to be in conversation with you, or at least to be able to ask you questions. And one thing I didn't think about or prepare for tonight, I don't know how people clap over Zoom if this has happened, but I will
thank you.
send my appreciation to you. I don't know if you'll be able to hear if others clap, but I'm sure they're clapping at home.
You're getting thank yous in the chat. And I also just wanted to pop back in and thank the both of you for your generosity in a really engaging conversation that I wish we could continue, but thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.